this one race she won't win. 'Cause life's not crossed with a cool chick. Too many folks feeling classic, but it never pulls in. Process the thoughts, read its dreamers, because this world needs its dreamers. They never wake up. Look at us now, quit driving. Some things hurt more, much more than girls. Look at us now, start counting what adds up the way they did when we were young. Look at us now, quit driving. Some things hurt more, much more
Buenos días, queremos...
Good morning. We'll be starting in 5 minutes.
Minutes we will start the meeting. Please take a seat.
sense of it. What to do to make the feeling fade? Two people gotta stick together, love one another, save it for a rainy day. Two people gotta stay together, and even another shelter on a rainy day. I'll come running to your rescue. You gotta stand by me. There's a lot of love between us. We should never let go. Two people gotta stick together, love one another, save it for a rainy day. Some people gotta stay together, and even another shelter on a rainy day. Two people stick together. Two people shelter on a rainy day. Two people stick together. Two people shelter on a rainy day. You know I need your love. You got a hold on me. Long as I got your love, you know that I'll never leave. When I wanted you to share my life, I had no doubt in my mind. And it's been you, woman, right down the line. I know how much I lean on you. Only you can see. Changes that I've been through have left their mark on me. You've been constant as a northern star, the brightest light that shines, and it's for you, woman, right down the line. I just wanna say this is my way of telling you everything I could never say before. Yeah, this is my way of telling you that every day I'm loving so much more. 'Cause you believed in me through my darkest night. Put something better inside of me. You brought me into the light. Threw away all those crazy dreams. I put them all behind. And it was you, woman, right down the line. I just wanna say this is my way of telling you everything I could never say before. Yeah, this is my way of telling you that every day I'm loving so much more. If I should doubt myself, I'm only losing ground. I won't turn to someone else. They'd only let me down. When I wanted you to share my life, I had no doubt in my mind. And it's been you, woman, right down the line.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Morning. Could I ask you to take your seats? Buenos días. Buenos días. ¿Podrían tomar asiento?
gut.
I can believe the things that happen.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Wonderful to have everyone here. Apologies for the slightly late start, but it's wonderful to be with all of you today. And I want to welcome you to the meeting of the Summit Implementation Review Group, Ministerial. Before going any further, I'd like to turn it over to the Secretary General, Luis Almagro. Luis, over to you.
At the last General Assembly in Peru, we decided to strengthen our commitment to contribute to a democracy for all citizens in the region in keeping with the principles and values expressed in the OAS Charter, the Inter-American Democratic Charter, and the Human Rights Instrument. So we welcome you to the first Summit Implementation meeting of ministers that we do. Along with the GA, we recognize the U.S. government for chairing this ninth Summit of the Americas, or having chaired the ninth Summit of the Americas, and for engaging in a frank dialogue to build consensuses and to make an effort to implement the results of that summit between governments of society, youth groups, women's groups, the private sector. We welcome this initiative. And the meeting we had in April in Denver, and that will leave quite a legacy to the ninth summit. Today's meeting is an opportunity for us to review the work done in the aftermath of the ninth summit, to implement what we set out for ourselves in the motto of that group and the objective of that group, together with the 5 political commitments that were approved, make it possible for us to act to address some of the most pressing problems faced by the hemisphere: threats to democracy, diplomatic crisis, lack of equitable access to economic and social political opportunities, and with special emphasis on the most vulnerable populations who have been historically marginalized. We reiterate the commitment of the Secretariat of the OAS and its capacity as the memory of the summit process to continue working on following up and implementing the mandates that were adopted. Renewing the international cooperation for development in the post-pandemic period is very important for the region, and it makes it necessary for us to address the needs of development of the countries beyond just measured by levels of income, and to include a multi-dimensional concept of development. And so this is a call for all of the entities that took part in the summit for us to bring to bear the technical financial wherewithal that will address the full breadth of the challenges we face. I underscored the role of the Pan American Health Organization in offering technical assistance to those countries that took part in defining the roadmap to strengthen the regional capacities for preparedness and response to future pandemics and health crises, with the plan of action on health and resilience in the Americas for the consideration and adoption at this ministerial meeting. We established a political commitment that will make it possible for us to promote collective action, for us to tackle emerging health crises, emerging diseases, impact of climate change on health, and the need for there to be equitable access to critical input, especially vaccines. The leaders of the region renewed in the 9th summit one of the fundamental aspirations of the first summit of the Americas, which was to strengthen the rule of law, free and fair elections, human rights, and other pillars of open and free societies. At the OAS and other inter-American mechanisms, we will continue to foster political dialogue and defense of democratic institutions. Now, to conclude, regarding fighting corruption and following up on the Lima commitment with agreement that was taken on with Peru, there was a follow-up and implementation mechanism adopted from the Foreign Ministry of Peru vis-a-vis the General Secretary of the OAS to ensure following through with those commitments, and we will thus follow through with implementing the mandates of the summit. A new cycle, the 10th summit, will be held in the Dominican Republic, whom we thank for hosting that meeting for us to renew our regional agenda. the Summit Secretariat is committed to continue offering assistance in this process and to continue strengthening the participation of the surge and the social actors who are an integral part of this process. Thank you very much, Secretary of State. It's an honor to have you here with us in the House of the Americas.
Luis, thank you very much. Muchas gracias. It's, again, very good to be with all of you today. Let me just say a few things at the outset before moving on to the agenda of this meeting. First, Luis, to you, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the great work that your team has been doing. And to my fellow foreign ministers, to our National Summit coordinators, to the OAS permanent representatives, to members of the Joint Summit Working Group, thank you, thank you, thank you for your partnership since the summit. I'm also very glad to welcome with us today Ambassador Frank Mora for his first surge ministerial as our permanent representative to the OAS. Frank, welcome. A year ago, at the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles, our leaders made new commitments to build a more sustainable, a more resilient, and a more equitable region. Our countries pledged to invest in public health systems, to help communities adapt to the climate crisis and accelerate the clean energy transition, to improve digital access and connectivity, to safeguard our democracies. Over the last year, we have worked to make these shared goals a reality. Meeting in Lima to set benchmarks and working procedures to guide our collaboration, convening thousands of representatives from local government, civil society, and the private sector at the Cities Summit of the Americas in Denver, participating in 11 meetings to hear from a diverse array of technical experts, business leaders, members of youth and civil society groups from all across our hemisphere. As a result of these conversations, we developed an action plan on health and resilience. And today, I will ask this group to formally adopt that plan and chart a new course to strengthen public health in the Americas over the next 7 years. In doing so, we'll commit to investing more resources in our healthcare systems and workforce, improving access to health services from primary care to mental health support, boosting our emergency preparedness measures, and fighting non-communicable diseases like cancer and diabetes. We're also pledging to incorporate digital tools and new technologies like artificial intelligence into our healthcare institutions while safeguarding privacy. With this action plan, our countries will work to strengthen our public health infrastructure that's been put under strain by COVID-19 to ensure that it's more equitable and better prepared to detect, to prevent, and to respond to future public health emergencies. Later today, in the OAS General Assembly, we'll have a chance to advance another one of our shared commitments, our resolve to strengthen democracy. Together, we can enable our governments to make full use of the Inter-American Democratic Charter and expand our tools to build resilient democracies, from training young leaders to ensuring that the OAS electoral observers can operate free from threats, from harassment, or any other undue pressure. I'd also like to take a moment to share just a few ways that the United States has also made progress toward our commitments over the last year. At the Cities Summit, the United States launched our Cities Forward initiative, which provides $5 million to help urban areas in Latin America, the Caribbean, and the United States advance sustainability, equity, and climate resilience together. Under the America's Health Corps, the United States has also helped train 119,000 regional healthcare workers on everything from maternal health to tuberculosis prevention. And we are well on our way toward our goal of training 500,000 people over 5 years. We supported the clean energy transition, and we supported the clean energy auction Jamaica launched last month, through which companies can submit competitive bids to produce enough energy to power 10 million light bulbs in homes and schools and in businesses throughout their country. And as you all know, at the second Summit for Democracy, the United States and Costa Rica gathered our countries to discuss the Inter-American system and implementation of the Inter-American Action Plan on Democratic Governance, coming together to protect human rights, the rule of law, greater social inclusion, the foundational building blocks of every democracy. In the months to come, we will continue implementing our summit commitments alongside our partners, including by convening technology experts to discuss strategies for expanding connectivity, promoting open government, strengthening cybersecurity, and fostering inclusive growth. Later, during this meeting today, each country will also have a chance to speak about the work that they've done to turn pledges into action. We are eager to hear from all of you, and as we turn our attention to the 10th Summit of the Americas in the Dominican Republic in 2025, I'm looking forward to continuing the partnership that we built. With the dedication of this group, we can address the biggest challenge facing our nations in a way that none of our countries could ever do alone. By working together, we can build a future that actually delivers concrete results for our people. Finally, one personal note, I would like to thank Kevin O'Reilly, who today completes his service as the U.S. National Coordinator for the Summit. His tireless efforts, alongside your governments and so many colleagues, help ensure the success of 2 major summits in the last year, and we are very glad to have him join our mission in Nicaragua as our chargé d'affaires. So, with that, I think we can move to the agenda that we have. Luis, let me just ask if there are any other initial comments you'd like to make. Otherwise, we can turn to the agenda. Okay. Very good. All right. As I mentioned, our leaders committed to reach consensus on an action plan for health and resilience in the Americas in Los Angeles when they met last year. I think one of the things that we've all seen and that all of our leaders have seen are weaknesses that the experience with the pandemic revealed in our societies, in our healthcare systems, in our ability to respond. And they recognize the need to work together to try to strengthen health systems for everyone and prepare for future health emergencies. In response, the Surge and the Joint Summit Working Group worked diligently in a series of ad hoc technical group meetings to put together a concrete action plan. This effort, chaired by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, supported by governments from across our hemisphere, brought us together to chart a course to invest in health systems that work for all, that leverage technology appropriately, that prepare us for the next health emergency. To ensure that this action plan meets the needs of people in the Americas, the United States incorporated young people, the private sector, civil society, in the actual drafting and negotiation process to make sure that we had their recommendations and insights on the takeoff, not just the landing, and to ensure that our level of ambition actually meets the needs of people across the hemisphere. Adopting the plan takes us one step closer to a more resilient and more equitable hemisphere. So, I would now like to put forward the action plan on health and resilience in the Americas for your consideration and for your approval. The question before us is, can we adopt the action plan? All right. Thank you. Thank you. So, I am pleased to confirm the foreign ministers of the Summit of the Americas hereby adopt the action plan on health and resilience in the Americas. It's always good when it takes very little work to confirm a lot of work that's been done. So, thank you, everyone. Next, I would like to turn to another item, because in addition to sharing development of the action plan on health and resilience, we have also supported implementation of the other 4 political commitments that leaders adopted at the 9th Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles. Since chairing the ministerial meeting of the Surge on the margins of the OAS General Assembly last October, the United States, as I mentioned, has convened 11 meetings of ad hoc technical groups to advance implementation of Leaders Summit commitments and also to get feedback from our stakeholders. These included 2 meetings on Leaders, our Sustainable Green Future commitment, and 1 on the Accelerating the Clean, Sustainable, Renewable, and Just Energy Transition commitment, 2 on the Inter-American Action Plan on Democratic Governance, and 6 on the Action Plan on Health and Resilience in the Americas. These in-person and virtual meetings have brought together literally hundreds of experts from more than 25 countries to strengthen protections for environmental defenders, to promote green shipping, to strengthen coastal ecosystems, to encourage conditions to attract clean energy investment, to share best practices for delivering democracy to our people and advancing their human rights. In April, the State Department and the City of Denver hosted the first City Summit of the Americas, following the commitment that President Biden and I made during the 9th Summit of the Americas. And I have to say, for those who were able to participate, this was, in my judgment, a remarkable and incredibly productive gathering. The summit brought together more than 2,500 people, including 250 mayors from across our hemisphere, to empower stakeholders and discuss how to best implement the commitments that leaders adopted at the 9th Summit, recognizing that the greatest responsibility for action and the greatest impact on these issues typically takes place at the local level. Working with city networks, international organizations, and other partners, we provided a platform for underrepresented voices to discuss issues like climate adaptation and also migration on the same stage as prominent figures like the President of the Inter-American Development Bank and the head of government of Mexico City, reflecting our commitments to strengthen inclusive democratic governance. The summit allowed participants to have direct and substantive engagements with one another and prioritize practical solutions to our shared challenges. I have to say that when you see this in action, when you see people coming together from the municipal level, from the local level, particularly mayors who genuinely are, in all of our countries, problem solvers, where political differences, ideology are secondary, if not irrelevant, because the responsibility of these officials is to find ways to solve practical problems faced by their constituents. This is a very powerful dynamic. And the more we are engaged at these different levels across our hemisphere, the more we're sharing experiences and best practices, I think the greater effect we're going to have on actually making real and practical change. Given, from our perspective, the success of the first City Summit, it certainly should not be the last. And so we encourage the subnational conversation to continue. And we'd like to see the City Summit institutionalized as part of the greater Summit of the Americas process. We had, as I said, 3 days or so of remarkable gathering, but what really matters is what happens in the 362 days of the year. And my hope and expectation is that many of the contacts were made, many of the networks that were created, many of the dynamics that we helped energize at the summit are going to continue every day, and that we will find ways to bring people back together in this format going forward. So that's the report on the City Summit, and I think we're now going to, first of all, turn it over to you, Brian, and also open the floor to comments from delegations. Assistant Secretary Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Now I have the honor to open the floor for brief comments by any of the delegates who would like to speak. I have the honor of recognizing the Foreign Minister of Paraguay.
A very good morning, distinguished Secretary of State of the United States of America, Anthony Blinken. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, heads of delegations, distinguished Secretary General, dear friends, the mandates that have come to us from the 9th Summit of the Americas speak for themselves. They're clear, they're cogent, and they will have an impact on our hemisphere, considering that our heads of state adopted them with precisely the view that they should have a positive impact, that they should make a difference to our societies. And surely one of the essential elements there is health in the Americas, and that's why Paraguay is so pleased that we finally, after arduous negotiations, our action plan on health and resilience in the Americas. This will allow us to set forth a roadmap to enable a more equitable access to health care of quality for all our societies. It will also be, I believe, an important tool to facilitate better coordination among our countries with regard to public health. Now, the road to consensus certainly hasn't been simple, but I think we need to underscore, and I do so here now, the tremendous goodwill that was patent in every delegation which brought us where we are today. This, I think, buttresses our hope that we can indeed build a better future for every citizen in the hemisphere. Dear colleagues, excellencies, the lessons learned are too long to list. And surely the COVID-19 pandemic is indelibly etched in our memories. We know how important it is to improve our response capacity when anything of this nature becomes possible and it has any bearing on public health, and how important prevention is as a key element in helping us when it does. This has been considered multilaterally, and we know how very hard PAHO and the WHO have played their particular roles, but it is it not, indubitable that we discovered a lot of drawbacks, a lot of weaknesses in our respective systems. And so the time has come to take good note of this, to make sure we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, and always keep the human person at the center of our attention and put the accent on international solidarity. This is what we need, I believe, to really face up to the challenges in public health and to ensure that our societies are indeed more resilient. Finally, thank you very much for the report on the GRIC, on the implementation of the 9th Summit commitments and the outcomes of the First Cities Summit of the Americas. We applaud the government of the United States of America for having convened that meeting in the first place. Please be sure we stand ready to work very hard to keep working for all the peoples in the Americas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I now have the honor of recognizing the Foreign Minister of Peru.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Distinguished Secretary of State of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Distinguished Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, distinguished members of the various delegations meeting here today. It is a great pleasure to be with you at this new ministerial meeting on the implementation of the 9th Summit commitments and the outcomes of the First Cities Summit. We are pleased with the leadership of the United States and everything that has been done to move us down the road of a very ambitious agenda, spotting the most urgent needs of the men and women of this region based on the agreements that were reached in Los Angeles on the 20th and 22nd of the days we met there. We're delighted with the summit meetings and everything that is being done at the national level and the various meetings of technical groups, ad hoc and formal. Peru has been involved continually and has spoken up at each one of these fora. Especially, I would like to underscore the importance of the Plan of Action on Health and Resilience. The approval of that action plan is of particular note for Peru because at every point, together with Uruguay, we shared the co-chairmanship of that crafting of the political compact that led to our framing the program in the first place. We think this will be a very useful instrument for us to move forward, to bolster and to broaden the services of health through 2030, as well as to improve our response capacity in our respective health systems in such contexts as we lived in COVID-19. Not easy. Now, with regard to the Inter-American Plan on Democratic Governability, we believe, and do with the other countries, how important it has been for us to consider the regional challenges that are associated with governance and how important it is to deal with disinformation in particular. Let us remember that this plan covers actions that will allow us to take preventive measures, as in fact embedded in the Democratic Charter, because we all know We have to keep at it and be vigilant. The importance of measures such as the electoral observation missions are obvious. Now, in that same vein, we have also the fight against corruption. That surely is a central issue, as was the held at the 8th Summit in 2018. The Lima Commitment, with its 57 mandates to help spot and combat corruption in the hemispheres, also put us in a good position down the road. We have a virtual mechanism that we do hope will quickly be able to be tapped and be very much embedded in the heritage of the Americas as a whole. So I can only support the members to keep on that platform and do what they can to implement the initiatives and the actions of each one of our countries. But I do want to say that my country has been particularly concerned to keep listening to the various views that civil society have underscored and the other actors that are very much, and rightly so, a part of the summits of the Americas. We have at every point been open to these various activities because we are convinced that this is necessary for us to reach the goals we have set for ourselves. Mr. Chairman, Peru underscores its own commitment to the summit process and the Greek, and we assure you that we will continue to do our part to move us forward under the aegis of your chairmanship and, of course, with the help of everyone else. It is a common weal. Here, I'd like to applaud the Dominican Republic that just a few months ago hosted a wonderful Ibero-American summit, which was very edifying, and we are very, very certain that the next one will do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now has the honor to recognize Foreign Minister of Costa Rica.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished Secretary General, dear friends of the Summit Implementation Review Group, a very good morning to you all. Costa Rica is delighted to be with you at this first ministerial level of the Greek and extends its warm congratulations to the United States for its exemplary leadership throughout this process. We're deeply grateful to the entire Secretariat of the Summit of the Americas for their unwavering support and late nights, early mornings. We know we need to keep up the pace towards sustainable development and the meeting of our regional objectives. And this last period shows how well we can work together and obtain concrete results for the hemisphere. One example of these is the 9th Summit of the Americas, which we have understood clearly through the technical ad hoc groups that worked in it, the various working groups that work together under the summit on best practices, and the various delegations have spoken to this. And of course, we also see this through Mr. Kevin O'Reilly, Regional Coordinator of the United States for the summit process, as we heard last a few weeks. Now, every one of these steps, every commitment as it is met, makes a difference. We move forward. And surely, too, civil society, the private sector, and academe are key if we really want to navigate these very fraught times. Every actor, and they are many, have to be present in such processes as the Action Plan on Health and Resilience in the Americas. Clean and digital clean energies and digital transformation, green environment, the Summit on the Cities, the Inter-American Plan on Governance, among others. I could not begin to list them all. They're each relevant. Now, in these last months, we have discussed collectively the challenges to democracy, human rights and security, equity, resilience, economic recovery, the environment, digital transformation, the question of migration and refugees, indigenous peoples, LGBTI++ groups, inclusion, questions of gender, youth, race, religious freedom, climate change, I should say, and citizenship, both at the local level as well as national and regional levels. Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, this delegation would like to underscore particularly the Plan on Health and Resilience in the Americas. That action plan has been very, very important to our country, and we have sought, therefore, to remain very active in identifying the solutions to the various serious challenges to this region, specifying those 5 important areas to promote equitable access to services and health products, to invest in health, to strengthen preparation for emergencies, to take into account non-communicable diseases, and to work with technology in the most adequate fashion. We also want to underscore the importance of the Cities Summit, because we felt in Los Angeles that the best way to ensure more equitable and effective access for people, its own citizens, would be to have not just the regional dialogue, but very much a local debate led by local authorities. This is a no-brainer and will certainly make an impact on health, a transition to clean energy, digital technology that is critical, and certainly buttress security with civil society, academe, culture, arts, and so many other groups, not to mention, of course, other underrepresented groups such as the indigenous peoples. We know that this ambit covers a very great deal, and competition and competitiveness in the Americas is key also. The English acronym says it all, and so we're very grateful to the U.S. for the disinterested cooperation that was led and shared in Seattle. We know that from the Institute for Development and Local Ecosystems, working at all of the state levels with academe and so many other representatives of the productive and strategic sectors, as well as social and corporate responsibility, such that from the local level up, we can make a difference. Costa Rica feels that all of this has its place in the summit process, and the mechanisms of implementation is well framed in the democratic context and needs and is well accompanied by diplomatic support. We are convinced that the Dominican Republic will show tremendous leadership and make a difference, and we applaud them as of now. We're sure that everything they do will make a very great and good difference in the Americas. You may count on this delegation for this new cycle that we're beginning. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. The Chair now has the special pleasure of recognizing the host of the next Summit of the Americas, distinguished Foreign Minister of the Dominican Republic.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, sir. Distinguished Secretary General, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegation, we're so pleased to see how our common effort is making a difference and has indeed moved us forward in our work towards reaching a preliminary health on resilience and health in the Americas, beginning with the implementation of the plan that our heads of state and government have subscribed at the 9th Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles last year. In looking at this plan of action, we see that one of the direct impacts of the health crisis at COVID-19 certainly exacerbated the precariousness of the health systems of the various countries in the hemisphere, and not only here, of course, in the Americas, but elsewhere. We were not the exception. And so the multilateral and regional support that we offered to come forward and to make a difference during the pandemic I think was a good effort, as challenges certainly still exist. It's important that we think through all of this carefully so that we can do what we can to make our health systems more effective, our cooperation more effective as well, so that we can come together and tackle emergencies more effectively and also operate at the multidimensional and collective plane as we face these structural challenges that weaken us individually and collectively. Sustainable and broad collective action will indeed make us as resilient as we need to be. We are doing what we can to reduce the gap where gaps exist, so that our health system is a quality one and can reach the weakest members of society in order to reduce inequalities in the health system. The Dominican Republic has set up very innovative programs fostering inclusion in a universal health system. Between 2020 and 2021, through the national health system in my country, public insurance regime, we were able to bring in more than 2,200,000 people. That's about 20% of the population of my country, FYI, so that we could close the access gap. We are still working hard and about to adopt the draft law on inclusion and protection who suffer from autism throughout that spectrum. This with a view to better regulate the attention that we can pay and in a better and more compassionate way to persons who suffer from that illness. This will in turn allow us to improve our best practices and ensure that our health system is more resilient. What we seek to do is always to remember that at the center of any public policy, there has to be the most vulnerable among us. We want to avoid catastrophic illness and have that covered certainly by our health system, and we have increased coverage in our basic plan. And never mind whether the regime is in fact at the pension level or the subsidiary level or has any other category, we will cover it. This means that all those affiliated with the system will continue receiving the necessary support and get the treatment they need. We believe in this, and we believe that we're in the right path. We have reduced maternal mortality in our own networks, dropped by more than 40%, by the way, compared to 2021. That's not bad. And let us take the opportunity also to say that we will include a footnote noting a couple of reservations that we have in a number of the details of the plan of action, but we do very much ratify here and reiterate our commitment to human rights, human dignity, multilateralism, the implementation of the commitments that have flowed from the summits of the Americas as they are compatible with our own legislation, the treaties we have adopted, and public order. Before I close, let me very much thank our good friend Kevin O'Reilly, Nelson Arboleda, and the Summit Secretariat as a whole for the excellent leadership that has been offered us and invaluable cooperation in the technical group on resilience and implementation in the Americas, as well as the Pan American Health Organization for their invaluable support in drawing up the health agenda of the Americas, and all of civil society who contributed very usefully to this. And bravo to the United States for the leadership. We are deeply grateful for the space that was made available at the first Summit of Cities that was held just last April in Denver, Colorado, under the aegis global challenges, local solutions. And we believe that while it is true that, yes, adoption is a local issue, certainly adoption has to remain global, and we are all involved to an equal extent. Dear colleagues, as the next summit of the venue, I should say, of the next summit of the Americas, my country commits to do everything we can to strengthen the links between and among us, to do more for our common weal in the Americas and to try to better coordinate the implementation of the agreements we have reached and move resolutely to cities that will be more just, more resilient, and more effective. We will be following up on these plans of actions as adopted at the 9th Summit of the Americas. And we shall, of course, and very soon, by the way, be entering into consultation with all of you to pinpoint which will be the main issues to be tackled at the 10th Summit. So let us build on the summits that have already been happened, entrepreneurial, civil society, and so forth. We will do all we can to bring in an organic fashion, if I may put it that way, the Summit on Cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The chair now has the honor to recognize the distinguished representative of El Salvador.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Undersecretary Nichols. I'm very pleased and extend my thanks to the Chair and the Secretariat for the summit process, for the collective efforts that have been deployed in the follow-up and implementation of the commitments that were adopted at the 9th Summit of the Americas. We note that there are significant improvements that can be celebrated. We will be working, as we have been doing, in an inclusive and transparent fashion to try to meet the challenges of the international context and indeed the challenges in each and every one of our individual countries. We are very actively involved in the groups on resilience, health, our green and sustainable future, clean energy. We support the plan of action on health and resilience in the Americas that has tackled cost-cutting challenges in our countries. We understand, of course, that the great plan, the great challenge of all, will be to make sure that we have equitable access to our health services and a better preparation for the next pandemic. Pandemics, plural. Chair, for health, security, a decent job, and so many other key actions, we all know we have to move beyond the pomp, the ceremony, and the symbolism of these important summits that we hold, important as they are. We have to get down and deal nitty-gritty with the needs of our peoples. President Bukele and my country has fought very, very unstintingly against corruption and against violence. We're doing what we can in El Salvador to protect everyone in our society. And the challenges that were set forth in the 9th Summit are before us. A more resilient, a more equitable future has to be the reality for the countries of our hemisphere and not just a dream. What we set forth 30 years ago still is before us. Certain challenges surely remain, and we need to make sure that our rhetoric and that our action on the ground meet. We understand, too, that as we look at the 10th Summit being prepared to be held in the Dominican Republic, we have a lot to do. We need to speed up our own national and regional efforts to make sure that we have digital transformation, clean energy coming, more democratic cities in which we can respect the vast majority of people's will and meet their needs. Let me simply say that my country stands ready to do its part to follow up on the commitments that we have subscribed with everyone else to make the difference we need. Thank you very much.
The chair now has the honor to recognize the distinguished representative of Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ministers, heads of delegation, Secretary General, colleagues. I would like to start by thanking the U.S. For chairing the summits process, for the work done, and for convening this ministerial group for us to take a look at progress made since the last time we met in Lima to implement those commitments that were taken on the 9th Summit. As already mentioned before, this is a key agenda for the region. Brazil has taken active part in the discussions in LA and Lima about the overarching thematic areas in the political commitments that we adopted: sustainable development, climate change, energy transformation, digital transformation, resilience in health, strengthening democracy, promoting human rights, topics that are at the center of our national agendas. Within this context, we do recognize and we value the importance of coordinating the effort to work together on this, working with the technical secretariat of this follow-up group to keep institutional memory. We need to take part in all of the surge groups, working with the ministries and the other specialized agencies to continue this exchange of best practices regarding the political commitments taken on during the summit process. That's key for us to ensure that we achieve concrete results and to promote the necessary synergies with the OAS agenda. We know that the commitments taken on within the summit process does not blend or cannot be confused with the OAS's agenda. They are complementary and they contribute to bolster the coordination and cooperation throughout the region. The political push that this dialogue entails can lead to our cooperating in a broad array of topics under the different pillars of the organization. And so our perception is that the OAS has much can benefit from this broad array of commitments taken on at the Summit of the Americas. We're very pleased to see progress in these very important areas for our populations. We're also particularly pleased to see the adoption of the Action Plan on Health, which is an important instrument that offers to ensure more equitable access to healthcare services and to make sure there are sufficient investments made in preparedness for emergencies, dealing with non-communicable diseases, and its implementation. Effective implementation should involve not only government representatives, but also the participation of stakeholders in our societies, and to mobilize the private sector as well as regional financial institutions. This will contribute to consolidate in the Americas, to make the American continent more prepared to tackle health challenges in the 21st century, and to better meet the needs and aspirations of our societies. Mr. Chairman, in Brazil's view, the main message of this General Assembly and this group can send to the peoples of the Americas is that the development agenda is back front and center in the efforts of this body. Our peoples have urgent needs that need to be addressed: hunger, addressing poverty, the fight against food insecurity, and others cannot wait. It's our historic duty to meet these expectations. Within this spirit, I will conclude by reiterating Brazil's willingness to collaborate, as always, to the work carried out by this group. And we thank the Dominican Republic for its work, and we hope to achieve palpable results.
Thank you. Noting a slight technical issue, the chair has the honor to recognize the distinguished foreign minister of Jamaica.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Secretary General, colleagues. Good morning. It is my pleasure to address this first ministerial level meeting of the Summit Implementation Group. I wish to thank the Secretary of State for his comprehensive report, and the team at the Summit of the Americas Secretariat, the institutions of the Joint Summit Working Groups, the OAS Secretariat, and partners for their hard work and commitment in making the arrangements for us to meet here today. The follow-up engagements to the 9th Summit of the Americas have undoubtedly been constructive and serve to enhance partnerships, provide updates on actions taken, share best practices, and to develop new strategies aimed at the implementation of the political declarations adopted at that summit. We also welcome the opportunity to be informed at the outcome of the Cities Summit held in Colorado in April. Our presence here today demonstrates our commitment to enhance collaboration in the implementation of our common vision reflected in the 5 political commitments adopted at the 9th Summit. The work ahead, guided by these commitments, will undoubtedly help us to deliver the more sustainable, resilient, and equitable societies which we not only envision, but which our citizens deserve. Progress towards implementation has been possible through regular engagements with the Summit Implementation Review Group, member states and other key stakeholders, including civil society, youth, the private sector, and women's organizations. Jamaica remains committed to the process, and to assist in implementation, we have appointed technical experts to each of the ad hoc working groups for the action plans. Today, we welcome the adoption of the Action Plan on Healthcare and Resilience in the Americas. This is a fundamental step which will allow the hemisphere to strengthen capacities for medicines and technologies to tackle NCDs and infectious diseases and to better cope with future pandemics. This type of action further demonstrates our will and commitment to ensure that the issue of healthcare resilience is treated with the priority which it deserves. For its part, the Government of Jamaica is undertaking several initiatives to strengthen our health systems, notably primary healthcare reform, which takes a comprehensive look at the retooling of primary healthcare facilities and services. There are new programs to support mental health sensitization and care, as well as implementation of a health system support program for NCDs. We're ever mindful that over 70% of the population of this hemisphere is affected by NCDs, and that mental health is an ever-growing area of concern in this post-COVID era. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, Jamaica looks forward to the outcomes of the other action plans, notably on digital transformation, which we view as vital to enhance efficiency and increased productivity. In that regard, Jamaica fully supports digital transformation across all sectors, particularly health, education, tourism, energy, trade, and financial services. Any such program, however, must be accompanied by appropriate mechanisms to ensure cybersecurity and data protection. In respect of our clean energy transition, we are proud to have recently issued a new RFP process for 100 megawatts of renewables and encourage hemispheric investors to participate. We view this step as not only important for the environment, but to reduce our vulnerability to external energy market shocks. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, we can all agree that local government has a very key role to play in the implementation process in relation to services provided directly to our citizens. The successful staging of the Cities Summit in Denver is indicative of the key role that cities play in dealing with issues such as climate change, migration, good governance and transparency, as well as the promotion of inclusivity at the municipal level. I'm therefore truly pleased that Jamaica was represented by His Worship Senator Delroy Williams, the Mayor of Kingston, as well as other leaders from municipal authorities across our country. The gathering of a broad spectrum of stakeholders across the Americas in the Cities Summit was important in allowing the deepening of exchanges and the sharing of experiences and practices in support of the hemisphere's people. As it is often difficult for citizens to feel connected to matters of foreign affairs, Jamaica agrees wholeheartedly that this type of international engagement at the level of local government will redound to practical benefit of our citizens. In closing, allow me to reiterate that Jamaica remains committed to the Summit of the Americas process and supports the thrust towards building of strong partnerships around a viable inter-American system. Continuing collaborative efforts towards strengthening mechanisms and institutions will facilitate an effective implementation process. We therefore look forward to the ongoing work in the months and years ahead. More imminently, of course, we congratulate the government and people of the Dominican Republic, our neighbor, on becoming hosts of the 10th Summit and express our confidence in and support for their successful undertaking. We look forward to working with you, friends. I thank you.
Thank you. The chair now has the honor to recognize the distinguished representative of Guatemala. Foreign Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Secretary General, ministers, secretaries of foreign relations, heads of delegation, Your Excellencies. I would like to start by thanking the people of the United States for hosting us in this beautiful country and the effort that you have made to make sure that this be a successful meeting. And I would also like to greet all of the delegations here, and I am grateful for this surge ministerial having been convened This is a commitment to reassert our political and diplomatic ties, which have led us for over a year now to follow through with the commitments that we ratified in the city of Los Angeles. And this is very important because our countries, through these ongoing meetings and the ad hoc technical groups, have made progress. And we've been hearing from each of the delegations about this progress made, and this just is a testament to the true commitment we've taken on, and that to carry out that which our peoples most need. Now, what we are adopting on this plan of action on health and resilience in the Americas is the result of the great support we have received from the Pan American Health Organization, offering, without a doubt, a very important element of negotiation, which made it possible for us to make this plan, bring it to fruition. For Guatemala, health is a key aspect of our political agenda, and with this, from this standpoint, it's important for us to bolster our comprehensive health care services and to promote equity and quality of those health care services, and of course to make sure that they be efficient and transparent as far as the use of resources. On resources, we will work together to make sure that the right to health be something everyone enjoys. The plan of action on health and resilience in the Americas reflects a commitment of tackling together the difficult aspects of health. We should also recall the progress we have made during the post-pandemic process and the impact that COVID-19 has had on our ability to now get a jump on the development and prevent, rather, the emergence of new diseases. We have to have our own built-in mechanisms of resilience so we can be prepared for any other pandemic that might emerge. In my countries, we respect the human rights of all of our inhabitants without any distinction. And keeping with the political constitution of our country, we protect. Our constitution protects life from conception on and fosters health for everyone, especially women, families of Guatemalans. We understand that people are at the center of all political decisions made. So please allow me, Mr. Chairman, to express thanks for the information that has been shared here regarding the implementation toward carrying out the commitments taken on at the 9th Summit of the Americas. And I would just reiterate our thanks for the hard work done by the chair of the United States, which made it possible for this ad hoc working group to create a single and very positive health plan for the Americas. And rest assured, Guatemala will continue to contribute toward progress made in complying with these commitments. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks. The chair notes that in order to accommodate all of the speakers and conclude in time to move into the OAS session, I ask your indulgence in being brief. The chair has the honor to recognize the distinguished representative of Canada, ADM Grant. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Brian, I'd like to thank the Government of the United States and the Secretariat of the OAS for ensuring the commitments taken by our leaders in Los Angeles were further developed and implemented. Collective action is key to addressing global and regional challenges, and the implementation of the Summit of the Americas commitments is crucial in that regard. Canada would like to congratulate the United States for hosting the first City Summit of the Americas. This innovative initiative in engaging municipal leaders, business leaders, activists, and academics will add momentum to the implementation of the 9th Summit commitments. Canada is very pleased that the SURGE framework provides opportunities for civil society input, and we continue to encourage the inclusion of women's organizations and Indigenous peoples, which we believe is key for the successful implementation of all outcome documents. During the negotiation and implementation period, one priority for Canada has been to promote and defend democratic principles, values, and institutions in the region. We have been proud to take a leading role on this theme, and we look forward to the continued implementation of the Inter-American Action Plan on Democratic Governance. We are also very pleased to see the adoption of the Action Plan for Health and Resilience in the Americas, a plan that will strengthen health systems. Canada is very pleased to have worked with hemispheric partners to secure the sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights of women and girls in the Action Plan. Protecting these rights helps to ensure that women and girls are safe, healthy, and able to fully contribute to their communities and societies. We'd like to thank the United States for serving as the 9th Summit Chair, for building an ambitious agenda and implementation calendar that underscore the importance of taking collective action in service of the peoples of the Americas, and for being innovative by hosting the City Summit. We would especially like to recognize the leadership of Kevin O'Reilly as U.S. National Summit Coordinator and wish him all the best on his next endeavors. And finally, Canada looks forward to working with the next Summit Chair, the Dominican Republic, as we continue to look for ways to collaborate for the benefit of all the peoples of the Americas. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Michael, and I'd like to recognize that you'll be concluding your service in the Foreign Ministry, and I want to thank you for your partnership and leadership in our hemisphere as you move on to the next stage, so thank you. I now have the honor to recognize the distinguished representative of Argentina. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Representatives of the General Secretariat of the Department of State, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, and dear delegates, I would like to thank the U.S. authorities for the efforts put forward to follow up on the commitments adopted at the 9th Summit of the Americas. I would also like to extend that recognition to the General Secretariat of the OAS for its ongoing support as Technical Secretariat in the summit's process. Argentina commends the effort undertaken by the different national technical teams to put together the plan of health and resilience in the Americas, as well as following through on the commitment taken on by heads of state and of government in Los Angeles. It's very important for us to focus synergies and coordination, the complementary nature of efforts, to not duplicate efforts or carry out any type of activities that would take precedence over or undermine other common efforts. In recent past, our country has joined efforts with other states of the region to foster the development of initiatives in order to produce and distribute strategic medical supplies and to coordinate activities that would mitigate the effects of the pandemic. I'm speaking about socioeconomic and health outcomes or results of that pandemic. And so public and private financing mechanisms that need to be devised nationally and internationally in order to bolster healthcare systems, health infrastructure, as well as value chains in health, to thereby reduce inequalities and barriers to access to a comprehensive healthcare system for our peoples. As we proposed when putting together the political commitments of the 9th Summit, we need to stress that the implementation of said commitments should adopt an inclusive approach, taking into account vulnerable groups and historically marginalized groups, with special emphasis on the importance of progressing on gender on a gender agenda in a cross-cutting way. I reiterate Argentina's firm commitment to continue working toward promoting and respecting human rights and strengthening democratic institutions, as well as broadening opportunities for citizen participation and to improve policies to fight corruption. As you know, in Argentina, we understand democracy in the broadest of terms. That includes norms and procedures for holding elections. We think that inclusive democracies or for democracy, one of the most important aspects of democracies is that it be inclusive. To roll out public policies, in this case in health, which should guide us in the implementation of a plan of action of democratic governance. Argentina is convinced that our shared history affords us the best tools and strategy to together forge a common path toward a more promising future. The urgent needs of our peoples compel us to continue working toward greater unity in our region. The differences and nuances that exist between us and each and every one of our identities and cultures should be factors that just strengthen our continent. I wish the Dominican Republic the best of luck and offer Argentina support for your efforts in hosting the next summit. Thank you.
Very much. The chair has the honor to recognize the distinguished representative of Suriname. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was not going to speak, but I have to relay a certain message. Suriname is very pleased with the draft action plan on health and resilience in the Americas. At the same time, I'm also a chair of a cluster group on humanitarian assistance for Haiti. And what we see is that increase of retention and availability of well-trained and qualified health workers, which is part of this action plan, is important, but sometimes there are well-intended policy measures by certain countries which work differently in other countries. And during our sessions with some of the hospitals and other humanitarian organizations in Haiti, they noticed that they mentioned that there is a humanitarian visa policy by the US and Canada, which is well intended to protect people, but in fact, they say it attract much needed nurses and health workers, and they have asked to reevaluate that policy. So I'm just passing this message. Also, we see that recruitment by others of best trained health workers in some countries, also in Suriname. This is not government policies, but individual health organizations that put out advertisements. And it's very expensive to train and takes much time to train new nurses. So we should, as part of the retention, also try to avoid these kinds of practices. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair has the honor to recognize the distinguished representative of Uruguay, Mr. Foreign Minister. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, Secretary General, Luis Almagro, Foreign Ministers, Permanent Representatives, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for Uruguay to take part in this meeting a little bit more than a year after holding the 9th Summit of the Americas, which made it possible for us to reach so many commitments and agreements on in areas in which we have common interests and that are somewhat thorny. I would like to also thank the chair for having convened this meeting and for the work done over the last couple of months that has made it possible for us to make progress in some of the commitments that we subscribed last year, laying forth a line of action for others for the remainder of 2023. Our country places a special attention and interest in the work of the Surge and the summit process of the Americas because it enables us to tackle the main challenges in the hemisphere, identify common solutions, taking into account the unique characteristics of each country. We offer our support to the 5 commitments from the last summit: the Inter-American Plan of Action on Democratic Governance, the Plan of Action on Health and Resilience in the Americas, the Regional Program for Digital Transformation, accelerating the transition toward clean energy and our green future. As everyone knows, and as the Minister of Peru said, with Peru, we are co-chairs of the Working Group on Health and Resilience during 2022, which culminates with the approval of this plan, which we just approved a few minutes back. Without a doubt, this is going to make it possible for us to address together and in collaboration means of addressing pandemics such as COVID-19 pandemic, and I thank everyone for your participation in that effort.
Thank you all for your hard work and your interventions today and your strong support for the summit process. The challenges facing the people of the Americas have regional and global dimensions, and our coordinated action through the Summit of the Americas process will remain critical to ensuring a prosperous, sustainable, equitable, and resilient hemisphere for all. As we applaud our successes over the last year implementing our leaders' commitments at the 9th Summit, let us redouble our efforts to deliver on these commitments and meet the needs of the people of the Americas. In concert with these efforts, I look forward to ever closer collaboration with your countries under the leadership of the Dominican Republic to prepare for the 10th Summit of the Americas. I now would like to give the floor to the United States' National Summit Coordinator, Kevin O'Reilly, for his farewell remarks. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Secretary General, ministers, colleagues and friends. I've had the honor and pleasure of coordinating this summit process since August 2020, when the United States took the baton from our Peruvian friends and colleagues. And as the Secretary of State noted earlier today, I end my tenure as our coordinator. From then until now, through consultations and negotiations, formal and informal and ad hoc and by WhatsApp, through Los Angeles and Denver until today, your ministries and your governments have, along with the Joint Summit Working Group, offered your honest and sincere advice and good counsel, defending your own national interests, of course, with integrity and generally with good humor, always working to ensure the success of this process. And for that, really, I can only thank you. I've enjoyed the support as well of a wonderful and creative U.S. government team, and I offer them my deepest thanks as well. Today's steps forward on health is just one element of that. Not only are my colleagues from the Department of State, but also from Health and Human Services, including Dr. Arboleda, of course. Together, our governments have done much to ensure a prosperous, sustainable, equitable, and resilient hemisphere. As always, we, of course, have more to do, and so we must continue working together to deliver on the commitments our leaders made in Los Angeles. And I'm confident that we together will all extend the same degree of support to Foreign Minister Alvarez and to his government that the United States government has enjoyed from all of you when later this year the Dominican Republic takes the baton from our hands. For all intents and purposes, at the sounding of this gavel, the United States permanent representative to the Organization of American States, Ambassador Frank Mora, becomes our National Summit Coordinator. And I know he will also receive from you the same good counsel and collegial, if occasionally firm advice from which I have so often benefited. An administrative note, I would ask that delegations remain here in the room and seated. As I understand, we will begin the General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General, in approximately 5 minutes. And so thank you, and this particular meeting is adjourned.
Muy buenos días a todas y todos. Rogamos a las delegaciones, por favor, acercarse a sus lugares para que iniciemos nuestra sesión. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We ask delegations to kindly come to their places so we can start our session this morning.
Muy buenos días, por favor.
A very good morning. May I please request that the distinguished delegates take their seats?
Declaro
I hereby declare this third session of the 53rd regular session of the General Assembly open, and we shall continue with our dialogue of heads of delegation for this regular period on strengthening of a culture of democratic responsibility with protection, promotion of human rights in the Americas. And I am pleased to give the floor to the heads of delegation in the order previously established. And on the basis of the agenda we adopted this morning, we continue to hope that there will be a maximum intervention time per delegation of 6 minutes. Distinguished delegates, please stick to the 6 minutes so everyone has a chance to speak. By bilateral agreement, we have now agreed that it is the United States who shall take the floor, and I'm pleased to give the floor to our good friend, Secretary Anthony Blinken.
Mr. President, thank you very, very much. Secretary General, colleagues, buenos dias, bonjour, bon dia. It is, again, very good to be with everyone here today in this place that brings us together every day. This is the House of the Americas. More than 75 years ago, our nations came together to affirm what the OAS Charter called the indispensable role of democracy in delivering on security, on human rights, on development, on other vital needs of people across our hemisphere. And at the heart of this charter, and the Inter-American Democratic Charter that followed, is the recognition that the fates of our individual democracies are bound up in one another. And that when it comes to improving the lives of our people, our democracies are better together. Yet, as we meet today, a number of governments in the Americas are questioning the relevance of the OAS and democracy more broadly, the relevance to solve the problems facing many people across the hemisphere, a lack of economic opportunity, widespread insecurity, endemic corruption, an accelerating climate crisis, all problems that have helped drive an unprecedented number of people in our region from their homes. So we find ourselves at a moment of reckoning. Do we still believe that democracy is the best system to deliver for our people? And if so, are we willing to recommit ourselves to strengthening our fellow democracies and the institutions where we work together? The United States answer to this question is unequivocal. We believe in democracy and its enduring capacity for renewal and for revitalization. We believe it is the best way to meet the needs of our citizens and people across the region that we share. And we believe in the OAS, both in its capacity to improve our individual democracies and unite us to solve problems that none of us have the capacity to tackle effectively alone. As our former president, President Jimmy Carter, said at the OAS many decades ago now, to make our charter, and I quote, more than empty pieces of paper, to make it a living document, all of our member states must believe and act to uphold and to improve it. So today, let me briefly make the case for how we can recommit ourselves together to make our charter a living thing for people across our hemisphere. First, we continue to support and strengthen the OAS's core competencies, where it has a proven track record of improving our democracies in concrete ways. The OAS electoral observer missions are the gold standard for providing an independent, impartial assessment of whether elections are free and fair. In 2023 alone, the OAS has observed elections in Antigua and Barbuda, in Ecuador and Paraguay, and it will observe Guatemala's presidential vote on June 25th, just 2 days from now. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights has for decades provided a forum for citizens in all of our nations to seek justice for human rights violations and abuses, from the enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings of the dirty wars and the drug wars, to the report it published just last week, concluding that the Cuban government agents were involved in the 2012 deaths of human rights defenders Osvaldo Paya and Harold Cespero. And the Commission has been a trailblazer in promoting the rights of traditionally marginalized populations, including peoples of African descent, indigenous communities, and LGBTQI+ people. The America's Health Corps, we talked about that earlier today, will train 500,000 healthcare workers over 5 years, 500,000, on key issues like maternal and child health. And we're well on our way to realizing that goal. We've already trained 119,000 people just in the last year. That is going to make a material, concrete difference in the lives of our citizens. Long-standing strengths like these are the reason that our ambassador to the OAS, Frank Mora, fought so hard to rally support for one of the biggest increases to the organization's budget that we've seen in decades. The United States funds approximately half of that budget, thanks to the support of our Congress. I want to thank CARICOM for spearheading the effort to approve what is a crucial increase. We also fully support the outside review of the OAS General Secretariat so that we can ensure that people in the Americas are getting the most out of the resources that all of us are contributing. Second, we can recommit to holding ourselves and countries across the region to the core principles of the OAS and the Inter-American Democratic Charters. And that, of course, means continuing to shine a spotlight on the widespread violations of human rights perpetrated by authoritarian governments and looking for ways to hold them appropriately accountable and stop their repression at the same time as we seek to aid their victims. But that's only part of it. We also have to make our voices heard when our fellow democracies stray from the principles that we've all agreed repeatedly to uphold. When democratically elected leaders in our region try to weaken the independent institutions that provide checks and balances, when they crack down on the media and on civil society, when they fire or harass prosecutors, judges, election officials, or other independent government officials just for doing their jobs, when they try to extend term limits, when they attack or try to discredit multilateral institutions, including this one, for raising legitimate criticisms, we cannot stand by. We need to speak up. Not because any one of our members thinks that we're perfect. We know that we're not. No democracy is. But rather because we're invested in each other's democracies, because we made a commitment to hold one another accountable, because we know that one of the most dangerous steps a democracy can take is to strip away citizens' rights to improve the system from within. And because we know that the risks inherent in backsliding, not just to individual countries and their citizens, but to entire regions, are real. The United States is not immune to this. Throughout our history, we have grappled with challenges to our own democracy. We continue to grapple with them to this very day. Indeed, in so many ways, these experiences underscore for us the importance of always striving to address our own shortcomings and to do it openly, to do it transparently, not to pretend they don't exist or to try to sweep them under the rug, because we know ultimately that is the only way to get better, the only way, as we would say, to try to form a more perfect union. That's why we open ourselves up to review and criticism from journalists, from human rights defenders, from regional and multilateral organizations. And that includes from the OAS and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which recently conducted site visits to the United States to focus on homelessness, indigenous rights, and climate change. Third and finally, we must continue to adapt our institutions and partnerships to try to seize some of the emerging opportunities and meet emerging threats. Never has the need to do this been so acute. Look at any of the big challenges that we all face that are actually affecting the lives of our people. Not a single one of them can we solve by acting alone. That's why President Biden has worked relentlessly to reinvigorate institutions like the OAS and to try to stand up new coalitions across our region and around the world. We brought together countries at the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles to adopt the Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection, the first truly regional approach to this issue. And 21 countries have signed on with concrete commitments. Together with civil society, with the private sector, with humanitarian organizations, with multilateral and regional organizations, we continue to drive progress on the pledges that we made, and we will work on that day in, day out. We'll continue that later today when I have the honor of convening a ministerial meeting of our partners. In April, we convened the first ever Cities Summit of the Americas in Denver, Colorado, bringing together 250 mayors and also governors, tribal and indigenous officials, leaders from communities, NGOs, from businesses. Participants shared innovative ideas, knowledge, approaches, and forged new partnerships at the level where democracy is closest to the people it serves. Most of all, we listened, we took notes, we learned. We're working together to expand inclusive economic opportunity across the Americas. We're broadening access to the emerging technologies that are increasingly crucial for doing business. We can't have a digital divide that separates those who have access from those who do not. We launched a new economic agenda, the America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity, to build more equitable growth from the bottom up and from the middle out. And we're making a push for multilateral development institutions like the World Bank to increase financing for the region's middle-income countries, as Vice President Harris discussed with our friends in CARICOM and other partners a few weeks ago at the U.S. Caribbean Leaders Meeting. Today, we're launching a new global coalition to address the public health and security threats posed by the illicit production and trafficking of fentanyl and other synthetic drugs. We encourage countries across the region to join us in this effort. In many ways, the United States has been the canary in the coal mine when it comes to synthetic opioids, but we see this problem spreading, including especially in our own hemisphere. The Centers for Disease Control estimates that approximately 110,000 Americans died of a drug overdose in 2022. More than 2/3 of those deaths were the result of synthetic opioids, inflicting immeasurable suffering on families across our nation. But there is not a country across our hemisphere that is not going to be hurt by this scourge or by the transnational organized crime groups that profit from it. And the only way to effectively confront it is together. In a few weeks, I'll have the opportunity to convene dozens of my counterparts from around the world for the Coalition's inaugural meeting. Colleagues, I said at the outset that the United States continues to believe, and believe strongly, that when it comes to fulfilling the aspirations of our people, the people across the hemisphere that we share, there is no better way than democracies working together. But of all the reasons I'm confident that our democracies can ultimately deliver to meet the significant challenges we face, there is one that eclipses all others. Our citizens believe in democracy. They want democracy. The latest annual survey from Latino Barometro shows that even if most people in our hemisphere agree that democracies can and should work better, and we know that, 2/3 of our citizens still believe that democracy is the best way for government to meet their needs. 2 out of 3. That's actually an increase from just a few years ago. And if all of our citizens continue to believe in democracy, if they are still invested in making our systems better from within, in holding us accountable, there's no flaw that we cannot fix. There's no challenge that we cannot overcome in the enduring march to make the rights and aspirations of our people a living thing. Thank you. Gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias, Secretario.
Secretary of State, thank you very much indeed. I'm pleased to give the floor now to the delegation of El Salvador. Distinguished Chair of the General Assembly, distinguished Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Secretary General of the Organization of American States, distinguished Assistant Secretary General of the OAS, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, it has been 70 years that our countries got together at the International American Conference to put their heads together to adopt the principles and values that cemented the ideal that is at the bedrock of our inter-American system. Now, sadly, history has shown us that time alone is no guarantee. Neither of the evolution and strengthening of a multilateral system that truly meets the needs, the present needs of our hemisphere and of our peoples. Shared responsibility has become almost, it pains me to say it, an unreachable goal. And that goal keeps moving on the horizon. We think of the humanitarian ideal of working for everyone's welfare, particularly the most vulnerable, those who have no voice, who are not heard, who are virtually unseen. We, states as one, should be able to say differently, but I know that is the case, and so do you. I've seen this year after year. And I well recognize that our common will, our shared responsibility, the focus of this organization, the raison d'etre of this organization was meant to be different, to make a bigger difference, to stand by this organization, we had hoped, would move us forward. And yet, we see in our present circumstances, do we not, that we better take another look and find another way through respectful and thoughtful exchanges. We see that the principles that led us to build this architecture need showing up. We need to focus on very clear results. Yet again, allow me to say, at the risk of repeating myself, we need shared responsibility around our shared goals. This is the essence of our Pan-Americanism, and we have been convened at this General Assembly precisely to exchange views on the culture of inter-American and democratic culture, so that the humans in our Americas enjoy their human rights. And the issue, I believe, is quite timely. It is here that we need to remember, sadly, the violations of human rights that we Salvadorans have suffered for decades, while a number of bodies who have been raising the flag of human rights and singing its praises have turned a blind eye and a deaf ear and have aligned, for reasons of their own, with interests that have been directly contrary to the interests of the vast majorities of the people who are out there and who are hurting. Now, Chair, the barbarism and the uncertainty that a number of innocent societies, and I speak of my own, has been a real cross to bear. This is what we were suffering before in 2019 Najib Bukele took the presidency. We were the number one country for violence. We were the most violent country, wait for it, in the world, in that shameful scale of criminality. Back in 2019, that number one most criminal, most violent country on the planet was El Salvador. Now, under the shadow of the corruption of states that were working hand in hand with terrorists and criminals, known to be so by the country that is hosting us as I speak, we, some of us, girded our loins and tried desperately to fight the terror that was our daily bread. And through the leadership of President Bukele, with unwavering determination, we have finally put an end to that barbarism and have moved forward without blinking to restore true peace, security, justice, and order, what every Salvadoran citizen was praying for after decades of despair. The problem of violence is a modern concept, let's say. It is rather unique. It really speaks to the needs of our own country. We know that we need multidimensional security with action taken at the interior level, at the level of public security, and at the level of citizens' security. These are three aspects of a single system. And El Salvador today is proud to stand up, held high our heads, to show that we are a responsible country which views its security as a comprehensive whole and taking recognition and responsibility for its own safety, recognizing that that goes beyond our member states, and thanks to each of the member states who have supported us in that endeavor. Our sovereignty, the dignity of our people is there. The committed workers and citizens who are determined to go forward and not to give up hope, finally to live in dignity and in peace. Every Salvadoran citizen, wherever he or she may reside, shares that goal, and they are our maximum priority, not just the Salvadorans who live at home, but the many, many millions who live abroad, good people, hard-working people, people who deserve the best. To take the right road of history, dare I say the high road of history, has meant for us to be the object of unbelievable criticism. But we don't care. We're united, we're brave, we're resilient, and we are dignified. And we are unshakable in that purpose. And we will not be moved from our determination to become a prosperous and a safe and a peaceful country. Mr. Chairman, firm believers in the autonomies of state, we in El Salvador will not allow, let me say it flat out, any type of questioning or backbiting or intervention on the part of anybody claiming some historic reason to interfere. But guess what? We have overcome all those obstacles and more. And for the first time since El Salvador is a republic, people feel they have a voice. People feel they're being heard as regards the role of the country. And we are taking transcendental decisions for our present and indeed for our future. And I think today's reality in El Salvador speaks for itself. Citizens who, guess what, are breathing easy, are breathing deeply, and are finally daring to hope. Some national sectors, even at the level of governments, are looking askance and saying, well, not sure about that level of government, not sure we can actually buy in. But they haven't taken the time to really look at us and deeply understand where we're coming from, who we are. And they spit out statements, fatuous declarations that are simply unrooted and bear no relation to the facts. That is what has indeed undermined our relations with states and for the longest time eroded people's belief in our institutions. But we're not there anymore. And we are not going back, let me tell you. Since July of 2019, we're on a new road, a high road, with absolutely palpable results, and the statistics speak for themselves. I say again, the ease and the relief with which our country is united is palpable. absolutely tangible. So we are not wavering, and we are determined to go ahead and build the best country we can. It's as simple as that, because our citizens deserve once and for all, and finally, a life in peace. As my president has said, we are determined to work in the hemisphere, with the hemisphere, in the world, and with the world, with anyone who was willing to come to us, understanding that our relationship has to be a relationship of mutual respect and benefit for all. It has to be a win-win. And I invite each of you and hug each of you in saying this. And I can only hope you'll come soon and visit the new El Salvador. Come and see it for yourselves. You're most warmly invited. Come and feel the hope and the joy that is on everybody's smile, because it's there. Thank you. And God bless our Americas. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Minister. I give the floor to the delegation of Dominica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, Ministers of Foreign Affairs, heads of delegations, permanent representatives, alternate representatives, permanent observers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Mr. Chair, I bring greetings from the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica, and his best wishes for a successful 53rd General Assembly. I also bring greetings from the Honorable Dr. Vince Henderson, Minister for Foreign Affairs, who was already in Washington, D.C. for this assembly, but had to return home due to threat to the Commonwealth of Dominica from Tropical Storm Brett. Mr. President, this is yet another reminder of the climate impact on our region. I join others in expressing congratulations to you, sir, on your ascension to chairmanship of this assembly. Mr. Chairman, we are aware that the multidimensional theme of this assembly, strengthening a culture of democratic accountability with human rights promotion, protection, and equity in the hemisphere, comes at a time when the world is emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic. The financial impact of the pandemic on the economies of our member states, the effect of the Ukraine war, tightening global financial conditions, and intensifying and unprecedented climate events. For the Commonwealth of Dominica, these events come on the heels of a devastating Category 5 hurricane, and while we were implementing our plans to becoming a fully climate resilient nation by 2030. In these times, democratic accountability must focus on development, management, and implementation of practical policies and programs that address to the basic and fundamental needs of our people. This, we submit, is the only way to secure human rights. It is from this vantage point I will address you. Mr. President, the Commonwealth of Dominica believes that fundamental to the strengthening of democratic accountability with human rights protection and promotion and equity in our hemisphere is education of its citizenry. The government of the Commonwealth of Dominica continues its aggressive program towards universal education and has to date achieved universal access to preschool, primary, and secondary education. This is accompanied by an ongoing program that has seen a significant increase in the access to college education and progress in an ambitious policy to have one member in each family attend university. We highlight here civic education as critical to fostering awareness of human rights, democratic principles, and responsibility as and among citizens, and the associate curriculum is being prepared by our Ministry of Education. Mr. Chairman, maintaining a healthy society and workforce is a prerequisite for productivity and economic development. The government of the Commonwealth of Dominica has recently made strides in upgrading its health facilities with the completion of a new tertiary level care facility, along with several new and upgraded primary health centers with new services added. Free hospital care is provided for nationals below the age of 18 and those above 60 years. These achievements are costly but necessary, despite very limited resources. We are grateful to those who provide assistance to us in this journey. Mr. Chairman, affordable and resilient housing is a human right like no other. Since the passage of Hurricane Maria, government has intensified its housing program with a substantial increase in the construction of resilient housing, making them available to the vulnerable and to those who need them the most. Mr. Chairman, we admit that the pursuit of becoming the world's first climate-resilient nation is an ambitious initiative, but it is imperative. Speaking on this matter, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica, added, "Dominica has defied expectation and is implementing a range of policies to promote sustainable economic development, restore livelihoods, improve construction and design standards, and renew infrastructure." The work plan and programs of each sector has been adjusted and adapted to include resiliency, and we will endeavor to continue along that path. We are determined to succeed, but we will need the continued assistance of our partners. Mr. Chairman, we are fully aware that the international efforts to combat greenhouse gas are insufficient if the looming catastrophe is to be averted. We must all continue to advance the mitigation and adaptation agenda under the Paris Agreement. On our part, the Commonwealth of Dominica has a positive history in the protection of the environment, and one of our key investments is that the development of geothermal energy, which will reduce the Commonwealth of Dominica's reliance on use of fossil fuels. Mr. Chairman, with respect to the financing of initiatives to secure human rights activities discussed above, I need to make these 2 points. We support the work of the development of the Multi-Dimensional Vulnerability Index to assessing the vulnerability of small island states and other countries, and serve as the criterion for access to and allocation of concessional resources among countries. Also, the Bridgetown Initiative is an action plan to reform the global financial system so that the world can better respond to current and future crises. We add our voice to the nations of this hemisphere, calling for the full support of these 2 transformative proposals. The specific measures I highlight above are not exhaustive, but are supported by other measures such as ensuring food security, promotion of a secure and crime-free society, and accessible legal and judicial system. Finally, we applaud the OAS continued work to strengthen regional and international cooperation among member states that foster sharing of best practices, expertise, monitoring and promotion of human rights and democratic norms in our hemisphere. We also recognize the stellar work of CD in our region, and we commend the effort of Ms. Kim Osborne, Executive Secretary, and her staff in the delivery of services to member states. We join others in the call for increased support of this very important area. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the delegation of Grenada.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, esteemed colleague foreign ministers, heads of delegation, permanent observers, chair of the Permanent Council, representatives of international organizations, representatives of civil society. Good morning to all. I join the other delegations around this table in congratulating you, Mr. President, on your presiding over this regular session of the Assembly. I bring everyone greetings, warm greetings from Grenada, the spice of the Caribbean, on the day when my government celebrates its first year in office. Grenada is firmly on a path to sustainable development that is being forged by a robust transformational agenda which my government has charted. Mr. President, fora like this General Assembly are crucial to enhancing and amplifying the level of original dialogue as we map a steady course, not just for individual countries, but for this organization that has the potential to support our development efforts. 8 months ago, we met in Lima to discuss the challenges facing our hemisphere, challenges that are no respecter of sovereignty, sub-regional grouping, gender, race, or ethnicity. Have we advanced? What is the new rating on our scorecard? Mr. President, my delegation would not be a party to simply paying lip service to the issues when we sit around this table. We will deem this 53rd regular session worthwhile if we seek to meaningfully address the decline in democracy in some of our member states and the multidimensional forces that threaten our security and stability, such as the illicit trafficking of firearms. And if we meaningfully address the damaging effects of the climate crisis, support efforts to restructure the global financial architecture, and advance viable models of funding mechanisms to finance the development needs of small island developing states, including the resilience portion of climate change. Mr. President, June 1st marked the official beginning of the hurricane season, and the Eastern Caribbean is already experiencing periods of severe weather. Some of our islands are currently under threat of flooding and massive landslides. According to the predictions of the weather experts, the 2023 hurricane season has the potential to generate 7 storms, which may become hurricanes. Islands like Grenada, Mr. President, are always conscious of the potentially devastating impact that one storm or hurricane can have on our economy. One tropical storm or hurricane can disrupt, destroy lives and livelihoods, and cause unimaginable hardships. Mr. President, the gravity of these and other challenges is the reason that my delegation has co-sponsored several of the resolutions and declarations tabled at this Assembly. But we'll be remiss if we do not encourage member states to earnestly examine the value proposition of this hemispheric organization. On the surface, it appears that sister nations of the Americas believe that there is value in membership, and most have remained members of the OAS. The question becomes, is it because this organization truly holds a measure of value and worth for member states? If this is the case, then it must be evidenced by our renewed commitment to ensuring that the procedures that govern the OAS are reinforced, that the OAS can operate from a fiscally strong position, and that there is accountability in governance. recently, several questions were put to member states during retreat with the aim of taking an open and honest look at the health of this organization. From my delegation's perspective, unless we are prepared to strategically design a means to enhance the value and relevance of the organization within the hemisphere, address the issue of strengthening the relationship between member states and the Secretariat, or determine a list of the top priorities for the OAS to focus on, why do we gather here, Mr. President? My delegation challenges member states to evaluate the organization's value and vision, its institutional management and governance, and its resources to make it fit for purpose at this time. Which leads me to the budget of the OAS, simply to say that we need to rebuild and strengthen the organization by putting it on a sound financial footing, financial path that enables it to adequately carry out its mandate in our collective interest. Mr. President, political actions have human consequences. And it is good, in fact, it is correct to focus on human rights and the respect for democratic institutions. But, Mr. President, we must not be selective in our application of these principles. All of us have friends who have sinned and fallen short of the glory of democracy. Yet, we embrace them when it is in our singular interest. It is in this regard, Mr. President, that we call for the ending of the financial and economic blockade of Cuba and, to a lesser extent, Venezuela. These actions, Mr. President, have dire consequences for the citizens of the Eastern Caribbean in particular. We talk about the right to health. Cuba, almost single-handedly, has been responsible for providing healthcare services to hundreds of thousands of people in the Eastern Caribbean at minimal cost to our states. They have trained our doctors, our nurses, other people in the healthcare industry. We talk about energy security. Through the Petro-Caribe arrangement with Venezuela, countries in the Eastern Caribbean were in the past able to have reliable and affordable access to energy, to fuel. So we therefore send out this call to this body to ensure that the people of the Eastern Caribbean do not continue to be collateral damage in a fight among the big boys. Mr. President, my delegation believes that we can achieve the ideals of strengthening a culture of democratic accountability with human rights, promotion, protection, and equality in the Americas. When we fortify our democratic institutions and recommit our full support for multinational organizations so they can deliver shared prosperity to all citizens of the Americas. And with your leave, Mr. President, I wish to take this opportunity to acknowledge the service of our outgoing ambassador, permanent representative, Smith, who I'm sure may have told her colleagues that her tour of duty comes to an end next week. Ambassador Smith has been a model representative of Grenada, and she has served us well over the past, I'm afraid to say 29 years. She is an exemplary international civil servant, and we know she will continue to serve the peoples of this hemisphere with integrity and distinction in whatever capacity she chooses. On behalf of the government and people of Grenada, I say thank you, Ambassador Smith, for your service and commitment and for a job well done. Thank you.
it that you did finish your presentation, correct? Le ofrecemos la palabra.
I offer the floor to the delegate from Guatemala. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I greet the Secretary General, Luis Almagro, ministers of Foreign Affairs, heads of delegation, Assistant Secretary General, our dear friend, Ambassador Nestor Mendez, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. At this very important regular session, we've come together at this wonderful, historic Hall of the Americas. No matter where you look here, we are reminded of how important it is for us to be here, for us to have our democracy, our peace, the values that we have ratified in this very important charter, which enables us to consolidate our democracy and the values enshrined in Article 2 of the charter. These are the guiding principles that we protect with much responsibility and at any cost. The topic of this assembly, to strengthen a culture of democratic responsibility with the promotion, protection, and equal access to rights in the Americas, takes on special currency at this time, especially for Guatemalans, because on Sunday, the 25th of June, we will be holding elections which will be free, fair, and based on the principle of universal suffrage. And of course, as an expression of the people's sovereignty to elect the president, vice president, lower house representatives, municipal authorities, and other authorities of the Central American Parliament. We've had 22 such elections now, and we've had a number of electoral observation missions at those elections of the EU and of the OAS. This has happened since 1970. And that's the experience we've had of building a democracy thanks to the very positive assistance we've received in more than 20 different elections. Something else I would underscore, which is very important, and that is what we've done together in compliance with the vision of our president, Giammattei, to achieve or ensure that we have a prosperous and sustainable future. Alejandro Giammattei, our president, has a 2020-2024 plan with 4 pillars: economy, competitiveness, prosperity, social development, governance, and security in development. And this is also a part of a responsible, effective, and transparent state, open for all to see. Now, in the Inter-American Commitment Against Corruption, and in compliance with that, so we have e-government, open government, and we've made progress, very positive progress, vis-a-vis the pandemic of COVID-19. Economically speaking, we have had economic growth, and with low volatility and low public debt, we've shown macroeconomic resilience and financial stability. Even during COVID, we were recognized by the IMF, the World Bank, for having implemented a host of measures and fiscal stimuli that mitigated the effects of the pandemic. And it's because of that that the pandemic didn't swell our debt. Nothing holds Guatemala back, and we're moving forward in investments and attracting capital and investments that help us to create jobs. Mr. Chairman, I would like to underscore the opportunities that we have vis-a-vis our common threats, such as irregular migration, as a case in point, and we also have an opportunity to foster circular migration to leverage the benefits from the agreements of the Summit of the Americas, the impact of migration to ensure orderly, safe and regular and optional migration. We've also increased the opportunity for temporary work programs working that throughout the world, but also working with Spain, Italy, United States, and Canada to make that plan a reality and to offer more hope to our citizens. We have also been working at different regional fora in the MERPs and others. And today, of course, I can't fail to mention, after 26 months since the invasion of Ukraine, 16 months ago, that was an awful event leading to so many victims. Violation of the UN Charter makes us think, because Guatemala has condemned the invasion and the humanitarian effects on Ukraine that invasion has had, leading to untold displaced, thousands of deaths, all of which have resulted from this unacceptable act that cannot go unpunished. We need to guarantee justice to all of the victims of this and any future war crimes. My country has supported the creation of a registry of damage, or and this for what would be a special tribunal that could be set up for this, and that we commence a dialogue for us to foster a peace process that would make it possible for us to conclude this horrible conflict. I would underscore, and by way of conclusion, the President's commitment and that of the people of Guatemala in all areas necessary to ensure that this organization that's so important be the agent for a better future for our citizens. We express solidarity with our brethren of the Caribbean who are dealing with climate change directly, as they are in the path of an approaching storm, and we stand by to assist in any way we can. We will continue working together with our Caribbean brethren. We are part of the Caribbean Basin, and as brothers and sisters, we will work together to address in a comprehensive and holistic way to adopt those solutions that are necessary so that at COP28 we can take to that conference a common front, present a common front on the changes that need to be made. I express thanks for all the support that we have received from colleagues throughout the hemisphere, especially. And we agree in the equitable representation that we have achieved in the IACHR, and without a doubt, we are thankful for the candidacy of the Guatemalan candidate, Ms. Orellana, who during her mandate has shown a commitment to human rights. Mr. Gustavo. So under the leadership of the Secretary, Luis Almagro, and his team, we thank you. We will continue to promote democratic values, family, respect for human rights, and of all people without any distinction according to our Constitution and through the different treaties that we are signatory to. We bless all of the countries of that. God bless Guatemala and all the peoples of the Americas. Thank you.
Yes, Señor Canciller.
Thank you very much, Minister. I offer the floor to Guyana.
Colleague Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, permanent observers, delegates. It is a pleasure to be here in the halls of the Americas to join in the deliberations that are of critical importance to the people of our hemisphere. Let me take this opportunity to thank the Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, and staff for the excellent preparations made for this assembly. Excellencies, the government of Guyana remains committed to the 4 pillars upon which this esteemed organization rests: democracy, human rights, multidimensional security, and integral development. The pillars of the institution's charter are as relevant now as they were from the creation of the OAS. We will continue to support efforts for meaningful reform that is needed to preserve and strengthen the institution. The theme of this year's General Assembly is apt: strengthening a culture of democratic accountability with human rights promotion, protection, and equality in the Americas. Electoral monitoring remains one of the core strengths of the OAS, and we have seen the electoral observer missions preserve democracy within this hemisphere. In my own country, Guyana, we have witnessed the strength of the role of the OAS's electoral observer mission in August of 2020, when our democracy was threatened and our electoral process was put at risk. This organization must work to ensure that democratic institutions are preserved and democratic principles upheld. Guyana is committed to the respect for human rights. We must celebrate the American Declaration and the 25th anniversary of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. These documents stand the test of time. The government of Guyana has nominated a candidate in the person of Dr. Arif Bulkan for the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights as a sign towards the value we place on rights of indigenous peoples, women, girls, children, and other vulnerable groups. And we also hope that he would be given an opportunity to serve on the commission. Guyana has responsibility for agriculture and food security in CARICOM's quasi-cabinet. This is a task that we do not take lightly, as the region's import bill remains exorbitant. However, what can derail our progress in cutting our food import bill in half is climate change. Guyana was therefore pleased to support and co-sponsor the resolution proposed by Barbados entitled Towards Enhanced Access to Climate Financing. The resolution calls for the need and for a retooling of the global financial architecture to cater for the effects of climate change on small island developing and low-lying coastal states, enabling them to build back more fiscal space. There is a need for timely action in Haiti. Guyana supports the work of the working group on Haiti led by Trinidad and Tobago. The eminent group of persons under the auspices of the CARICOM good offices must be commended for the initial steps taken in the recent meeting with Haitian stakeholders held during the 11th to the 13th of June this year in Jamaica. The meeting sought to facilitate inclusive dialogue among Haitian stakeholders in an effort to find a solution to the protracted multidimensional crisis in Haiti. Excellencies, we must seize the opportunity to bring about the improvement in the lives of the people of our hemisphere in staying true to our principles of the Charter of the OAS and the goals of our plans of action to preserve democracy, respect for the rule of law and human rights, and recommit to equity and social justice. I thank you.
Muchas gracias, Canciller.
Thank you, Minister. I'm pleased to give the floor to the delegation of Trinidad and Tobago.
Your Excellency Roberto Alvarez, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic and Chair of this 53rd regular session of the General Assembly, Your Excellencies, Ministers of Foreign Affairs and various heads of delegations, Your Excellency Luis Almagro, Secretary General, Your Excellency Nestor Mendez, Assistant Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, good afternoon. As an OAS and CARICOM member state, geographically located in the biodiversity-rich tropics, this General Assembly, being held once again in the well-known hurricane season, with several CARICOM member states facing its annual threat from tropical storms, currently Brett, is exceptionally significant for Trinidad and Tobago. Chair, this is so particularly in the context of the following principal outcome commitments that this delegation has co-sponsored. These are the historic CARICOM Seeker Declaration on Enhancing Resilience and Support for Central America and the Caribbean in the face of climate change, the most essential resolution towards enhanced access to climate financing, the most urgently required resolution towards the immediate restoration of security, strengthening the humanitarian assistance and support for protection of human rights and strengthening democracy in Haiti, and the annually important omnibus resolutions on advancing integral development and multidimensional security in the Americas. For Trinidad and Tobago and CARICOM, energy security, food security, and access to development financing are the highest priorities, which are integrated into our principal climate-related sustainable development and multidimensional security interests advanced at this 53rd General Assembly. Concerning our priority interests of achieving multidimensional security at both the national and regional levels, very recently, on April 17th and 18th, 2023, the Government of Trinidad and Tobago co-hosted with the CARICOM Secretariat in Port of Spain a regional symposium addressing crime and violence as a public health issue under the theme Violence as a Public Health Issue, the Crime Challenge. Chaired by Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and lead CARICOM Head of Government with responsibility for energy and security, this symposium focused on gun violence and the illicit flow of firearms into the region, which are directly attributable to the high crime statistics, or related to the high crime statistics in the region. Without a doubt, Chair, crime and violence threaten democracy and human rights, undermine the rule of law, erode trust in institutions, and hinder economic growth and development. Therefore, Trinidad and Tobago asserts that addressing crime and violence also strengthens a culture of democratic accountability. Beyond the OAS, we are also engaged in high-level dialogue with key hemispheric partners to address these and other concerns at the regional level, while seeking complementarity in other international organizations. It is in the broader context of these principal interests and priorities for our twin island republic that the theme of this General Assembly has received sharpened focus by Trinidad and Tobago. Chair, at the end of Trinidad and Tobago's Permanent Council chairmanship, and in a landmark expression of our commitment to strengthening a culture of democratic accountability in the Americas, we adopted Declaration CP-DEC 79, entitled Advancing and Promoting Social Justice and Equity in the Americas. We adopted that declaration to address structural and systemic sources of inequitable privilege and unjust advantage that may be used to deprive persons of social justice and the exercise of their rights to access to social services. Trinidad and Tobago therefore calls for the elimination of all such structural and systemic sources of inequitable privilege and unjust advantage, including cultural appropriation, financial inclusion, gender stereotyping, historical erasure, racial profiling, territorial stigmatization, and wage discrimination, particularly against women, and especially in rural areas, in order to strengthen a culture of democratic accountability in the Americas. Chair, from the perspective of a strong, stable, small democracy in this hemisphere. Trinidad and Tobago is convinced that first, democracy is fundamentally domestic. It is therefore from that unique domestic reality that in Trinidad and Tobago a culture of democratic accountability is both expressed and experienced by women, girls, boys, and men in their respective villages, towns, and cities, and the promotion, protection, and equality of their inalienable rights are enshrined in our Constitution and are assured by the prioritization that we give to our national education and social protection policy frameworks. Second, Trinidad and Tobago is characterized by our recognition of the strength of our diversity for representative democracy. We therefore also acknowledge that there is no one-size-fits-all for strengthening our culture of democratic accountability, and we accept that there are diverse approaches for the promotion and protection of human rights to achieve our sustainable development aspirations. To this end, as an active member, represented on its board of directors by our Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Bridget Anizette George, Trinidad and Tobago continues to promote the Inter-American Parliamentary Dialogue, Parl-Americas, as an important regional forum for enhancing the understanding of our respective domestic and diverse democratic systems and institutions, and we co-sponsored the call for the Special Permanent Council meeting held on May 19, 2023, to promote the Inter-American Parliamentary engagement in accordance with the mandate assigned at our 52nd General Assembly. Third, Trinidad and Tobago is committed to democracy that delivers. Therefore, our Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, has assigned the highest policy implementation priority to digital transformation for strengthening a culture of democratic accountability through improved public service delivery that will promote public trust and protect the public interest. It is therefore from this balanced posture of readiness to prioritize all four strategic pillars of this organization that Trinidad and Tobago is obliged to express its concerns for the absence of an integrative approach to multilateral cooperation at the OAS. More specifically, as a consistent provider of voluntary contributions to the MESECVI, as well as to CICAD, Trinidad and Tobago continues to be uneasy at the regular funding subordination of our principal interests of sustainable development and multidimensional security. Furthermore, we consider this an appropriate time for the OAS to begin the consultative process for adopting an Inter-American Development Charter. Chair, this apparently discriminatory and evidently unequal experience with Trinidad and Tobago is reflected in the institutional culture of the OAS, even in the geographical representation of its personnel. Trinidad and Tobago therefore welcomes the anticipated comprehensive review of this organization and looks forward to the earliest implementation of the measures for strengthening the governance, leadership, and management of the resources of the OAS, which were agreed on at the Permanent Council retreat facilitated during our Permanent Council chairmanship. Chair, this statement could not conclude without remarks addressed to the grave situation in Haiti, our CARICOM sister nation. This delegation will address this situation further in detail later today. By our acceptance of the responsibility for its leadership, Trinidad and Tobago views the establishment of the Working Group on Haiti in the OAS as timely and necessary to facilitate regular dialogue with all stakeholders so that solutions can be found to address the multidimensional crisis. This working group is a welcome complementary platform to the efforts of CARICOM's Eminent Persons Group, established recently to engage stakeholders in Haiti. Chair, in closing, I reiterate Trinidad and Tobago's commitment to the purpose, principles, and values of this organization, and I express my appreciation to all concerned for organizing this General Assembly. Thank you, Chair.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I am pleased to give the floor to the delegation of Honduras. distinguished Chair, President of the General Assembly, and distinguished Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General, heads of delegation, ladies and gentlemen, as I seek to assess the historic role that this centenary, age-long organization has played over this last more than half century, I can only, as you have done, try to sense what the contribution has been to build up a hemisphere that is more equitable, more inspired by solidarity and the spirit of democracy. We continue to hope, do we not, that we will attain those goals, not only internally, domestically within our own countries, but indeed across the board and throughout the Americas, as our citizens demand, quite rightly. And there we seek to align ourselves along the principal values of our charter, our foundational charter. First of all, never to give up on the well-being of our own peoples. Never through our thinking become overly stigmatizing in our approaches. Not to fall back on the nearest interesting nationalistic philosophy that will put forward overly narrow, doctrinaire, and overly nationalistic views that are adverse to the goals we have set for ourselves, and to seek to eliminate any spirit of discord, which we know all too well only leads to chaos and, as we well know, to ruin. And so, in considering what this organization stands for, we can only hope that it will continue to seek the broadest possible approach to tolerance, to dialogue, to a respect for our differences, which are legitimate and are rightly so, avoiding unilateral measures or blockades of the literal or metaphorical type, which lead us nowhere good, and which certainly do not benefit our relations in the Americas. And so let us, I pray, work towards a commonality of views and of interests in our declarations and our positions. This organization must be inclusive, and must be inclusive now, responding to the needs of all. Mr. Chairman, given the circumstances of each country, each will decide which culture it will follow, but the promotion and protection of human rights throughout the Americas must be strengthened. Whether it comes from a particular view which ends up being translated into a double standard, that won't work. We need to work towards the progressive realization of our hopes and our principles, one which, despite our adverse circumstances, perhaps will hold high the goals of our human rights aspirations, avoiding the narrow interests of the state and of certain vested interests. We must then, we believe, read again the basic principles to which we have ascribed, so that we don't end up trapped in narrow policies that only go back to places where we know nothing good exists, as we lived in June of 2009. What a lost decade that was. We're only now beginning to dig ourselves out of that terrible misstep, so that we move towards transparency in the fight against corruption and impunity, hand in hand with our state authorities. In this new government, in this new administration that Xiomara Castro Sarmiento is heading, a woman of great patriotism and a deep belief in her country, strengthened, as we know, at a crucible of our experience as Republicans. We are moving forward to a major program of well-being that will benefit a vast swath of the population, rooted firmly in democracy and every other means by which we will sustain our sovereignty, our social justice and solidarity, with a view to offer protection and progress to our fellow citizens. That is our goal, and none other. Now, Chair, we are optimistic as we hear views that state that despite the ongoing efforts, sabotage, and attacks that our government is unceasingly suffering from, we are standing tall and rooted deeply in the principles we believe. And we will continue to fight to overcome the positive disaster that we inherited from the previous government, basing our policies and our action in a broad sense of international solidarity abroad and at home, so that we can continue to recover with, again, the greatest possible contribution from each citizen. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I'm pleased to offer the floor to the Minister of Jamaica.
Thank you, Mr. President, Your Excellency, Secretary General, colleague, foreign ministers, and other heads of delegation, Excellencies, permanent representatives of the OAS. Mr. President, I take this opportunity to congratulate you on your elevation to the role and your efficient management of this assembly thus far. I also thank Secretary General Almagro and Assistant Secretary General, as well as the team at the Secretariat, for the excellent arrangements made for us to meet here today. As we've stated in other meetings in the margin of this assembly, even as we encourage reflection on the modernization of various matters in response to the massive changes in the world around us, not only since 1948, but since COVID, Jamaica values highly the fact that the OAS continues to provide a forum for countries in the Western Hemisphere to deliberate on issues of mutual importance based on the core values reflected in the 4 pillars: democracy, human rights, multidimensional security, and integral development. Jamaica values highly and remains committed to a vibrant multilateral order which provides for the equal participation of all states in global governance and the development of solutions to common challenges. In this regard, our theme provides the opportunity for reflection on these issues of mutual concern. Chair, Excellencies, Jamaica has always been on the frontier of advancement in democracy and electoral systems. We were one of the first states in the world to implement universal adult suffrage, giving all citizens 21 and over an equal right to share in governance as early as 1944. As a vibrant democracy with ultimate respect for the rule of law, Jamaica has been undergoing proudly a national transformation in its society, economy, and now its constitution. At the root of all our efforts are consultation, inclusion, and partnership. To further strengthen our democracy, the Government of Jamaica, through the newly created Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, is undertaking the most fundamental constitutional reform since independence in 1962. In 2011, we amended the Constitution to create a Charter of Fundamental Rights. But now, the major area of focus is our transition from a constitutional monarchy to a republic in order to give full expression to our nationhood. The process is taking a consensus-based approach that allows for robust discussions between key stakeholders in government, opposition, civil society, and our diaspora. Importantly, the government, in pursuit of strengthening our democracy, is committed to a public education program on the Constitution and other laws of Jamaica to improve our citizens' knowledge, understanding, and responsibilities in a free and democratic society. The government is honored and proud to offer the Jamaican people participation in such a wide-ranging, consequential, and historic process. Chair, Excellencies, Jamaica will continue to actively support initiatives within the OAS and other fora for the promotion and protection of human rights. In that regard, we remain deeply concerned over the worsening crisis in Haiti, the world's first Black republic and second in the Western Hemisphere to gain independence. Haiti's ongoing multidimensional crisis is exacerbated by increasing gang violence, kidnappings, and brutality against women and girls. It has challenged the capacity of the state to guarantee basic rights to its citizens. Jamaica, together with other member states of CARICOM, continue to offer tangible supports and remain ready to be a part, Jamaica remains ready to be a part of multinational security efforts with the appropriate jurisdictional mandate aimed at restoring peace and stability in Haiti through implementation of Haitian-led solutions. This, as we recognize the practical reality that peace and security are necessary elements for distribution of humanitarian aid, for restoration of public order, and for free and fair elections. We also recognize, however, that greater consensus within Haiti is required for the sustainability of any agreed path. In pursuance of CARICOM's commitment to play a good office's role to help widen consensus around a Haitian-determined path to peace, stability, and democracy, Jamaica is honored to have hosted more than 50 Haitian stakeholders for 3 days of talks in Kingston. Stakeholders were able to address the core issues of the interim governance measures needed to restore confidence in the transition and to ensure that the government can deliver on its commitments. The government of Jamaica believes that the Kingston talks were a critical step in the right direction, and we remain committed to supporting the CARICOM Good Offices processes led by the CARICOM Eminent Persons Group. We also are convinced of the need for sustained international attention on Haiti and will continue to lend our voice to this effort, including through this organization. Jamaica looks forward to hearing of further developments on actions taken by the government of Haiti and on stakeholder discussions continuing in Haiti, whether facilitated by the Eminent Persons Group or otherwise. Chair, Excellencies, Jamaica is also well aware that the issue of gang violence is pervasive among a number of our member states. Crime and violence impinges on the enjoyment of human rights, particularly the right to life, liberty, and security of person, as well as the right to freedom of movement. We cannot lose sight of the impact of violent crime on our democratic societies and the potential weakening of states by criminal elements. Jamaica has identified the proliferation of small arms and light weapons as a primary element of the equation. Prime Minister Holness, in his recent address to the 77th session of the UN General Assembly in September, made a strong appeal for a war on guns. Given the gravity of the situation, it is clear that we need to deploy as a hemisphere our efforts, resources, and energies on ending the flow of illicit weapons through our hemisphere, given the direct correlation between the proliferation of arms and the level of crime and violence in our societies. While Jamaica and many member states do not manufacture these weapons, we are severely impacted by their use and availability. We were pleased, therefore, to join by amicus, along with a number of CARICOM states, Mexico's legal action to compel manufacturers of small arms and light weapons to modify their practices to keep our people safe. The flow of weapons is inconsistent with our hemisphere's global image and commitment to being a zone of peace. We must continue to strengthen cooperation to deal with this scourge and to keep these weapons out of our jurisdictions. Chair, Excellencies, the final matters I would like to discuss with regard to promoting and securing human rights are digital transformation, cybersecurity, and the emergence of artificial intelligence. Jamaica is pursuing a program of digital transformation in order to enhance the enjoyment of rights by the underserved and the most vulnerable. The government is creating the infrastructure and has developed a digital currency backed by the central bank to allow for digital expansion of public services to our citizens and to empower, in particular, our young people, our elderly, and persons living in rural communities who remain largely underserved by the banking sector. We're also pleased to be actively participating in the elaboration of a treaty on cybersecurity at the UN. In fact, we believe that as our countries seek to harness digital transformation for the empowerment of our people, we must also recognize how technology is being misused by elements of populations to pursue cyber attacks on useful and important systems in the public and private sectors, and to spread misinformation and disinformation, which again can undermine democratic societies. The widening application of artificial intelligence is an exciting development. Already it's proving helpful to humanity, particularly in the areas of health. However, like all resources and innovations, there must be appropriate regulations to govern its use and to prevent its impinging on the rights of our citizens. It is critical that our countries, and indeed this organization, pay attention to this phenomenon and recognize the changing face of what it means to support and maintain democracy and democratic accountability. Excellencies, many members of the OAS are developing states, being either small islands or having significant low-lying coastal areas, particularly vulnerable to external shocks. 70% of the Caribbean population lives on the coast or within 5 kilometers of the coast. Main cities are less than a mile therefrom. Climate change, including sea level rise, therefore poses a clear and present existential risk. We have a responsibility to scale up adaptation and mitigation to secure the environment and reasonable quality of life for future generations. Despite our small carbon footprint, Jamaica continues to do its part in mitigating climate change, cognizant of the indisputable fact that we have only one planet. However, due to high debt burdens which complicate an already tight fiscal space, developing countries like all of us in CARICOM find it difficult or near impossible to take all actions necessary on our own. Moreover, developed and industrialized nations have much more than a moral obligation to take greater action, since they have built their wealth by conduct responsible for the crisis. Jamaica continues to advocate for developed countries to both scale up their climate action and for multilateral action approaches to beat our climate targets. More specifically, we continue to call on the developed world to follow through on their commitments, including operationalizing the Loss and Damage Fund decided on in COP27. Jamaica also continues to call on developed and industrialized nations to effect meaningful reforms to the international financial architecture, including through elements of the Bridgetown Initiative, so that developing countries can access affordable and appropriate financing to address climate and other cross-cutting development issues. Chairs, Excellencies, the OAS must ensure that the citizens of our hemisphere, particularly our young people, are equipped to compete globally. Appropriate resources must therefore be geared towards the development of our human capital with increased emphasis on STEAM training. In this regard, the OAS must remain viable in order to play a strategic role in assisting the countries of the hemisphere to advance our peoples in this regard. At the national level, Jamaica will continue to implement its Vision 2030 National Development Plan, which is more than 96% aligned to the 2030 Development Agenda within the UN system. We will ensure that we place emphasis on the empowerment of our citizens through the creation of opportunities, economic growth and resilience, access to health and education, protection of the environment, and gender equality. We therefore look forward to our partnership with the OAS for continued support in the development of human resources and training, capacity building, innovation, and strengthening our micro, small, and medium enterprises. Mr. Chairman, I must before closing indicate that it has been a tremendous honor for Jamaica to have been afforded the privilege of serving on two important bodies within the OAS remit of the SEDI, namely the Inter-American Committee on Science and Technology and the Inter-American Committee on Tourism, CITUR. I take the opportunity to thank all member states for their continued support and look forward to continued collaboration for the benefit of the hemisphere, especially in the context of post-COVID recovery. As our Commissioner, Margaret Macaulay, approaches the end of her second term on the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, of which she currently serves as President, please allow me to also publicly convey appreciation for this opportunity to advance human rights protection in the region. Mr. Chairman, as we also recognize the significant anniversary of the OAS, to recommit to the ideals upon which this organization was founded, Jamaica affirms once more that we remain committed to the work of the OAS as we seek to make the hemisphere a better place for the development of our peoples and for succeeding generations. I thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Minister. I give the floor to the delegation of Mexico. Thank you very much, Chairman. It's an honor for me to address you all in representation of Mexico and of Alicia Bárcena, the foreign minister who's been appointed in this 53rd regular session of the General Assembly of the Organization of American States. Foreign Minister Bárcena has asked me to offer warm greetings to everyone here at this General Assembly, reiterating her support to our ambassador, Luz Baños, who was a distinguished representative of our foreign policy as defined by the Mexican state and by its constitution. Mexico takes part in this assembly once again to reassert its multilateral commitment and its commitment to peace. A cross-cutting aspect of our foreign policy right through to Garcia Robles. We reiterate our commitment to human rights, democracy, and international law, in strict adherence to our constitutional principles of foreign policy. These values and principles characterize our activities in all multilateral spaces in which we take part, including the OAS, where Mexico seeks to ensure that this organization always adheres to the principles enshrined in its foundational charter and in keeping with the 4 pillars that they be carried out in dialogue with a humanistic approach and in collaboration with others. This can be a factor of change, an agent of change, offering a venue in the hemisphere in which states can come together and come up with effective mechanisms of cooperation without any meddling from outside, in keeping with the principle of sovereignty of each state. This principle plays out in the Inter-American Commission and Court of Human Rights, in the commitment in the Committee Against Illicit Traffic in Drugs, in progress made to protect vulnerable populations such as our indigenous people, the elderly, LGBTQI plus group, and women and girls and all their diversity. Despite this, in the last couple of years, the hemisphere has faced unprecedented challenges that the OAS has not been capable, for which the OAS has not been capable to bring together any type of response. We have to put the organization back on the path of a true hemispheric integration that would enable us to address the challenges and needs that our countries face daily. Mr. Chairman, we're at a juncture characterized by geopolitical tensions, health crises, food insecurity, and the devastating effect of climate change, among many other phenomena. If something unites us to the other countries here, it's in the objective to improve the quality of life of our populations. That is where we have to turn our attention and the efforts of this organization. To this effect, Mexico will continue to advocate for the overhaul of the OAS, for it to be able to, through dialogue, a respectful and inclusive dialogue, address these common challenges in cooperation with all the countries of the hemisphere. The history of this organization cannot be understood without Mexico's commitment, and I would underscore 4 topics in which we have played a leadership role. We promote the full respect for international law, and especially inter-American law. That's one of the greatest contributions that the OAS has made to the universal system. We are firmly committed to the main bodies of the Inter-American human rights system, which includes the presence of renowned Mexican experts, such as commissioners and judges. 3, Mexico has ratified the 3 conventions on the protection of human rights of older persons, the fight against racism, racial discrimination, and related forms of intolerance. and against all forms of discrimination and intolerance. And 4, we preside over the Committee of Hemispheric Security, the Conference of States Party, and the Pro Tempore Secretariat of the Inter-American Convention against the fabrication and illicit trade in firearms, munitions, explosives, and other related items. Lastly, and no less important, Mexico is the fourth contributor to this organization. We also make voluntary contributions up to $1.5 million. We respect the OAS Charter, and we see and of the internal decision-making bodies to address especially financial administrative matters of the organization. Mexico reiterates its commitment to multilateralism and the inter-American space. We need a renewed OAS that be relevant and that serve the needs of all the states, taking on hemispheric and global challenges through diplomacy, dialogue, and negotiation. We hope that OAS can become an effective agent for us to achieve these aspirations. Thank you. Thank you. Delegate from Mexico. There not being any more speakers, I propose that this third plenary session take note of all of the presentations made by heads of delegations, which and they will be captured in the minutes of the session. The fourth plenary session is slated to start at 5 this afternoon. However, given the full agenda that we have with a number of elections, for commissions, committees of this organization, I propose, if no one is opposed, that we start the work of the fourth plenary at 3 p.m. If there's no opposition, it's so agreed.